Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ashanti McGee. I'm the Grant and Access Manager at Creative West. Welcome to our capacity building webinar series. We've created this series to address the needs of artists, arts organizations, and state arts agencies. This series is a direct response to expressed needs of artists, arts organizations, and said state arts agencies. Our goal is to facilitate professional development and strengthen the creative community through sharing valuable information. Before we begin, I would like to share Creative West's preamble, shared commitments, and our Zoom. For our preamble, Creative West shares a fundamental and abiding commitment to equity, accessibility, inclusion, and belonging. We recognize and greatly appreciate the extraordinary contributions of our team and the impact we seek to have in communities in the West and beyond. We understand that trust is built slowly with communities we wish to serve that have experienced generational betrayal and trauma. Our shared commitments provide a grounding for generating spaces of trust and safety within our team and the communities we seek to serve through our work. We are dedicated to seeing these commitments reflected in our work over time consistently. Next is our shared commitments. We value humility, learning from our mistakes, and asking questions to gain deeper understanding. We feel empowered to hold one another accountable, establish boundaries, and ask each other for help. We lean into discomfort by facing challenges and conflict with openness and grace. We stay present by listening actively, being mindful of body language, and participating with the fullest of our ability. We share from our own experiences and grow as a team through the inclusion of every individual voice. We prioritize accessibility and are mindful of our language in ensuring belonging for all. Thank you so much. Let's see. And next is Zoom norms. Please keep your microphone muted when not speaking, and you can find the mute button on the far left corner. Please rename yourself and yourself to your first and last name, as well as your state or jurisdiction acronym. And you can click on participants, hover over your name, and click the More button to change. To ask questions or to make comments, please use the raised hand function and/or write your question in the chat at any time. And you can click reactions in the middle of your screen and choose raise hand, or click in the chat in the middle of your screen to write your question or comment. Live transcripts are turned on at this time, and you can view and hide those by change the size as well as other functions by using the up arrow on live transcript, which is either in the middle of your screen or behind the More button with the three dots on the right of your screen. And next, I am going to hand it over to Anika. Our first webinar of the series is Creative Capacity. Of the Creative Capacity Building series is called Community Outreach and is hosted by Anika Tené, Director of Grants, Awards, and Programs. And I'll hand it over to Anika.
Thank you so much, Ashanti. Can everyone hear me? I can't see you right now because I've got my screen set up in a certain way. But let me know, Ashanti, if I'm not heard or anything. We are so happy to have you all here today. And I want to just also, right from the beginning, open up the chat. That is going to be an important way that we can communicate with each other. I have a lot to share with you, but I want to make sure that you know that the chat is yours. So please feel free to introduce yourselves, say where you're calling in from, who you are, what your work is, why this session was important to you. anything like that. So, good afternoon, everyone. Of course, my name is Anika Tené, and I'm honored to welcome you to today's session on community outreach, amplifying impact through inclusive engagement. Throughout my career, I've been driven by a personal mission. I had a mentor who asked me what my personal mission was, and at the time I didn't have one. And over the several months, I began to realize that my personal mission is about curating spaces where brilliance can thrive. I'm a singer. I don't always have to have the microphone, but I want to make sure that there's spaces for other singers, other artists, um, who may not always have access, may not always have power, may not always have resources to use their voice. And so throughout my career, whether it's in the arts, in education, or community engagement, my focus has always been on creating opportunities for individuals and communities to shine, to feel empowered, and to realize their potential. So, as you've heard, I'm currently the Director of Grants, Awards, and Programs at Creative West. I've seen some of the folks that registered, lots of friends, lots of grantees, fellows, from our various programs and friends of Creative West. Thank you for being here. And so in this capacity, I lead initiatives that break down barriers and foster equity across diverse regions, whether it's urban neighborhoods, rural areas, island communities. Our work is about designing programs that reflect the unique needs of communities and emphasize collaboration and inclusion at every step. So this mission to curate these spaces has guided me through my roles from supporting underserved artists and communities in South Africa to building equity-focused education programs at the Kennedy Center and leading cultural engagement as a chair of the Arts Commission here in Arlington, Virginia, land of the Anacostans, where I currently live. I grew up in California, so I am a Creative West region person. But I believe deeply in the transformative power of outreach when it's done thoughtfully and inclusively. That's the caveat, and that's what we'll talk about further today. And it's all about creating connections, amplifying voices, and sparking meaningful change. This webinar is an extension of that belief. Together, we'll explore practical strategies for building trust-based relationships. I think if nothing else, we need to think about trust first. Um, and creating impactful programs and creating spaces where both you and the communities you serve can thrive. So I'm thrilled to share this journey with you today. I hope it's the beginning. Um, you can always find out how to reach me through our website. I'll share my um, email address in the chat. Always here and always ready to have conversation. And I look forward to learning from each of you as we move through this session. So let's dive in. So let's first take a quick look at the agenda. And you will get these resources. You'll get the slide deck. I know that's always the question that we have. And so you'll get all of these after this session. So I've already introduced myself, so yay, and I hope that you all are introducing yourselves in the chat. Um, and so next, we are going to dive into understanding community outreach. We'll define what it actually is and why it's vital. We will, after that, explore the key elements of effective outreach, including how to identify community needs, build that trust, and co-create with our communities. From there, we'll look at it says best practices. I like to use the word promising practices. I'll probably change that. Promising practices from some case studies through some work that some of you all are familiar with, like our Tour West program. And so we'll be looking at some case studies from our lens as a service organization. But you all are largely performing arts focused, and so we'll give some examples in that space. And you'll have time to do that when we have our interactive time, where you'll work in small groups, very small groups, about 4 people, and you'll engage in designing an outreach plan. So you'll have that tool, and it's a chance to apply some of the things that I'm going to share with you today and to kind of get feedback from peers, to meet a couple of people that hopefully you can keep in touch with. We'll also tackle some obstacles that are common in the work, by looking at how we can overcome challenges. And then we'll have Q&A, just because of it's a long time, an hour and a half, but it's also pretty short. So we'll try to keep the Q&A later. We'll have a break a little bit later on as well, just to kind of transition ourselves. And so when we do the Q&A, I'll kind of recap the takeaways from today. And again, you'll have the slide deck. I have a number of resources on the slide deck, including a glossary of all the terms that I'm going to be using today. The session is recorded, and I know that Ashanti will be making that available to you all. Okay, so let's dive into understanding community outreach. So let's begin by understanding the purpose of the session and why community outreach is vital. At its core, this workshop is about equipping you with tools and strategies to build those meaningful, trust-based relationships with the communities you serve. These relationships are foundational for effective outreach, fostering inclusion, sustainability, and access to resources. So what is community outreach? There could be a lot of definitions. These are 2 words that have their own definitions. Now we're bringing them together. So to level set, this is the definition on the screen that I am using. And so community outreach, it's more than just communication. It's more than engagement. It's more than butts in seats, is just a term we, tend to use in terms of community development and community engagement in performing arts. But outreach is the process of creating trust-based connections with diverse communities to foster inclusion. It's where we actively listen to the needs of communities, collaborate on solutions, and ensure that everyone feels empowered and valued. Why does this matter? Outreach is especially critical for underserved communities, those who might face systemic barriers to access or representation in the work. And when we engage intentionally, we help to dismantle those barriers and create opportunities for inclusion. So in the arts ecosystem, outreach not only strengthens the community ties, but also ensures that diverse voices and perspectives are celebrated and supported. Outreach is also a key driver of the E word. And I know I can't not mention that we live in very politically charged times. And so outreach is a key driver of equity. Equity is not a bad word, but I do know in some spaces that word is decreasingly being allowed to be used. And I want to acknowledge that. But do know that is a word that we deeply engage with and believe in at Creative West. So by meeting communities where they are and co-creating solutions that align with their needs, we create spaces that everyone has the chance not to just survive, but to thrive. This isn't just beneficial for individual communities, but it enriches the whole cultural landscape, allowing art and creativity to flourish in ways that are reflective of all our stories. Dr. Jackson, chair of the National Endowment for the Arts, talks about artful lives, that everyone has access to that, right? As we move forward, we'll explore practical strategies and real-world examples of how to make outreach intentional, impactful, and inclusive. Let's build relationships that truly make a difference. So let's look at some key elements of effective outreach. And after I go through those, you're going to have a chance to, and I want to tee you up to think about who are your people. As you're listening to me, think about who are your people. And it may not be specific names, it might be institutions, organizations, groups that you work with or want to work with. Who are your people? So let's dive into some of the key elements of effective community outreach. These elements form the foundation to building those meaningful, lasting, impactful relationships. The first is identifying your community. Who are your people? This is where we largely use techniques like community mapping. If we were together in person, we might draw maps, we might have big post-it pages where you could draw and really brainstorm like who is in my community, who is who. So community mapping is about understanding who makes up your community, what their needs and challenges are, and what resources already exist. It's a process of gathering that data, and whether it's through conversations, meeting people in coffee shops, or creating a survey, or doing demographic research, getting data from your city or from your town, from your region, from your state, to get a full picture of the people who you want to reach. Whatever way it goes, it's about knowing who's in our community, who are our potential people. So, for example, if you're in a rural area, you might uncover that lack of transportation is a significant barrier to arts engagement. We all know, working for a performing arts center, working at the Kennedy Center across the river here in DC in the past, it was all about getting those school buses. We needed the school buses to be able to come in to bring kids in for those shows, right? So important. Or in urban settings, community mapping might reveal opportunities to partners with schools or local organizations that have strong connections already to the community. And so this information allows you to tailor your outreach efforts to align with the real world needs and strengths of the community. Must be tailored. It's not a one size fits all. And then once you've identified your community, the next critical step is all about building that trust. Trust is at the heart of effective community outreach. This means leading with transparency, flexibility, and commitment to listening. Trust is earned, right? When communities feel seen and respected, not just as beneficiaries, but as partners in shaping the work that we do. So, a great example from our point of view would be offering a flexible funding program or resources that communities can use as they see fit, rather than imposing rigid requirements. This approach recognizes the expertise that the community already holds and acknowledges their ability to self-determine, right, what's best for them. When trust is prioritized, it opens the door to deeper, more authentic relationships. So I've given an example of how we look at things at Creative West. I want to acknowledge that there's people still coming in. So Ashanti, if you can be looking at the participants for letting folks in. But you, in your world, let's talk about a few examples. What about a performing arts center that's in a metropolitan area and it wants to engage with the local Latinx community, which has expressed interest in preserving their cultural traditions through music and dance? Instead of creating a pre-designed program and asking the community to participate in it, the center would set aside a flexible grant specifically for this community, right? The center could then invite the Latinx community leaders, cultural organizations, artists to share their vision of how the funding could be used. And after open dialogue, the community decides to use the funds for a series of workshops or a traditional folklorico dance or mariachi music, culminating in a public performance at the center, right? So the key elements of this approach is there's no rigid requirements. There's recognizing the expertise that lives with the community, and it's that trust, right? What's the outcome? Not only does the community feel empowered, but the arts also strengthen, it's the art center also strengthens its reputation as a welcoming, inclusive space. Word will get out. When people speak about us, they will speak about, oh, we had this experience. I attended this show, and this is what happened there. I could really see how the community was not only engaged, but really owned the workshop, the process, whatever it is. So this flexible, trust-based approach creates a win-win for everyone. So another one, a performing arts organization wants to engage with the remote indigenous community in the Pacific Northwest to support the preservation of traditional storytelling and performance practices. Instead of creating a top-down program, the organization offers flexible funding to the community, again, with no strict requirements, asking only that the funds support local cultural initiatives, right? So, not strict requirements, but having this broad vision, having a broad objective or goal. That's how the organization comes in and shares, this is what we'd like to do broadly. How do you see that happening? And then the conversation, consultation with elders and community leaders. The community chooses to use the funds to host a series of storytelling gatherings. And these events allow elders to share traditional stories, songs with younger generations, while also training local youth to perform and document those practices. So the community also decides to use part of the funding to record the performances, creating an archive for preservation. So no prescriptive conditions, recognizing local expertise, prioritizing building relationships, right? So the result is that feeling of respect and empowerment to carry forward with cultural traditions, while the organization gains valuable insights into the things they didn't know about the community's heritage. And so this partnership fosters trust and ensures that the organization is seen as supportive, respectful, rather than imposing. It lays the groundwork for the future collaborations that the center might want to have. Once you've established a level of trust, it can grow. Once you have established a level of distrust, that could also grow. So one last quick one. Let's say I'm trying to touch all of us. So the other one was a remote setting. The other one was a metropolitan area. What about a mid-sized city who wants to engage with the local deaf community to increase their participation in theater programs? Instead, again, of designing a one-size-fits-all outreach effort, the center can prioritize accessibility by collaborating directly with deaf community leaders to shape the program. Using using a flexible funding system, the center can allocate resources, right? Investment by hiring certified ASL interpreters for performances and workshops, providing closed captioning for digital content, such as marketing materials or recorded events, creating a pre-show ASL spotlight night where deaf performers can teach basic signs related to the production to attendees and making the experience more interactive. So the key elements here are community collaboration, removing barriers, and demonstrating commitment. Ideally, the result is that the deaf audience members feel welcomed and valued as a part of the community. The center also builds trust with them, leading to the potential for more programs in the future. And so this also highlights how having flexible funding resources and a community-centered approach can remove barriers and foster authentic connection. So what lies at the heart of all three of these examples is really building trust, right? It not only creates authentic relationships, but it also paves the way for long-term partnerships and meaningful cultural impact. Thing is about relationships, we know from personal to professional ones, they take time. And so when we take the time to cultivate them, when we move at the speed of trust, the long-term impact is that much greater. So I just spent a lot of time on trust, 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 trust. So the last one here is collaborative and co-creative approaches. And you saw some of those in in these examples. So co-creation is a powerful way to enhance the responsiveness of your outreach efforts. Its process involves three stages. So there's community input, feedback, implementation. In the input stage, you actively listen. You don't show up to talk, you show up to listen. What are we listening to? Community ideas, community concerns, community aspirations. In the feedback stage, which is the next step, you refine plans with the community's insights, ensuring voices shape the direction. Now, don't worry, I'm giving you a lot. I know you're going to get a tool, an outreach plan that's going to have all of these kind of questions and thoughts that you need to ponder to get to the various stages. So you're going to get all of this. Um, and so you're going to ensure through that feedback stage that your community's insights and voices shape the direction of the work. And then if the input was right, if the feedback was right, the implementation stage should be gravy because we're on the same page. You work side by side with the community to bring the ideas to life. So co-creation shifts the dynamic from we're doing this for you to we are doing this with you, right? It ensures that your outreach is truly effective, truly reflective of the community's needs and goals, rather than being one size fits all. Um, for example, in a recent Creative West initiative, co-creation meant inviting local artists and cultural leaders to the planning table early on. It's not bringing people, sometimes we feel we have to bring people in later because we don't have all of our ducks in a row, or we want to make sure everything looks the part. But sometimes we need to just show people our warts and all and let them, and that's a part of the transparency, right? So the input when we bring people to the table earlier helps not to just shape the programming, but also the logistics, so that the initiative can have the greatest impact. So together, these three elements, identifying your community, building trust, and embracing co-creation, can really lay the foundation for outreach that is not only effective, but transformative. As we move into the next section, think about how these principles, and I hope you're doing that. How does this relate to my work? Um, how can they apply to my own work? Who is my community? How can I build trust? And how can I invite people to co-create solutions with me? So let's take a minute to I reflect on your community. I told you at the top of this section. Um, who are you? Who's your community and the partnerships that can strengthen your outreach? So I'm pulling this up. And then if we can just share in the chat, you are going to receive, if Ashanti, if you can put that link in the chat. We're going to be thinking about um, who makes up our community. Think about the organizations or groups that you currently work with or those you need to work with. And then name three institutions. You're going to get an opportunity to enter three words. So name three institutions or organizations or groups that align with your outreach goals. This exercise will help us identify potential partnerships and opportunities to expand your program in impact. So I'm going to give you a second to think about that, and I want to make sure that you have access to the Mentimeter. So I'm going to stop sharing screen for 1 second. Who are the folks that you need to work with or already working with? Are people getting access yet, Ashanti, if you can just unmic because I can't see anyone right now.
Okay, I'm unmiked.
Or unmuted.
See. Okay.
Yes, I see people adding in. All right. So I'm gonna go back and present. Keep putting those words in, and we're gonna see them coming up on the screen so we all can benefit. All right. So another 30 seconds. Great. Back to my outline. Good, good, good. Lots of things popping up. So I'm seeing schools and artists as you know how these word clouds work. The words that most people are saying, those become the biggest. And you've got a lot of words, a lot of organizations, institutions, groups represented. Some of you have used specific names of organizations. That's great, just to get your brain going. So I see seniors, I see schools, I see artists are areas that are coming together for us. Schools are huge, right? Schools are huge when we think about everyone who's interacting in that school space, from teachers to students to administrators to parents to community organizations that rent space in schools, right? So schools become an important institution in our communities. And I'm sure as many of you are performing arts organization and have arts education programs, schools are paramount. I'm seeing a lot of other broader communities that you're naming, young students, people of the land, healthcare providers, rural populations, immigrant and refugees, public libraries. Public libraries. I'm so glad to see that. Libraries are staples in our community. They've got resource boards, right? That whenever I go to the library, I'm looking, glancing and seeing what's going on in the community, right? So that's great. Thanks for the thumbs ups that are coming out too on this. So you all will get these results just to kind of keep your brain working about some of these things. Keep thinking about these things. And I'm gonna go back to my computer's a little slow right now. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing this and we'll come back to that and I will go back to sharing the presentation. Um, Here, sorry about this. Lots of clicking has to be done. There we go. Are you all seeing my screen? Okay, there we go. All right, so we've looked at your results, we've seen that. So thanks for sharing those responses. Thanks for jumping right in. We saw some excellent examples of partnerships. One thing to consider as we look at these results, as we contemplate those results, and you should be able to see those results continuing on your devices. Um, is that we need to consider even further diversifying our partnerships, thinking beyond. So it's great that everyone has put things in there. So hopefully we've all seen some institutions or organizations that we may not have otherwise thought about, right? Healthcare providers, libraries, workforce development programs, even environmental organizations, right? These groups may not seem directly related to the arts, but they can bring new perspectives, resources, and opportunities to your outreach efforts. And these are trusted community institutions that can help bring credibility to you and to your intentions. When folks vouch for you that are trusted elders, organizations in the community, that can be an opportunity. And so we want to respect those relationships when they let us in, right? As we move forward, let's keep brainstorming.
I'm gonna go to the restroom again.
Okay. As we move forward, let's keep brainstorming how we can align with these and other partners to create meaningful, sustainable connections. Okay. So let's talk about a few case studies quickly. And I'm giving you lots of examples here today. And I hope, because I'm giving you Creative West examples, that this will also help some of you to be more familiar with some of our programs and how they work and some of the challenges that we've had and how we've learned from them, right? So we're going to look at three examples of community outreach and action. We're going to look at the BIPOC Artist Fund, and I don't want to make assumptions. BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. So we started the BIPOC Artist Fund. I'll tell you more about that. Tour West, I think many will be familiar with. I know that there's a number of Tour West grantees here today. And then our newest program, Cultural Sustainability. So these case studies illustrate how intentional outreach, getting that intentional feedback, advice, active listening to communities, addressing inequities, like letting the truth telling happen, and then creating sustainable impact in the arts really makes a difference. So we'll start with BIPOC Artist Fund. And so BIPOC Artist Fund has been running as a pilot. We'll, in the spring, be starting our third cycle of this 3-year pilot. It exemplifies what we call liberatory funding. It provides no strings attached funding to BIPOC artists who use their creativity to make a difference in their communities. So we designed this program. If you think back to the example earlier where I said, we have an idea for a program. We want to work with artists that are deeply moving with community. That's our broad requirement. We're not going to tell them how to work with community, but when they apply for programs, we should see that deep connection to community shining through in their application, right? So let me not get ahead of myself. So the key elements of this fund are artist-centered design. And so that means that BIPOC artists were involved in designing the fund, right? Creative West didn't just design the program on its own, but we partnered with members, alumni of our Leaders of Color programs to ensure that the program reflected their needs and values. And so we went through a month program. We hired 18 of our alumni and had a consultant where they really worked together to design that program. There was flexibility and trust. The artists decide how to use the funds, and that's whether it's for salaries, materials, even rest and healing, what they know best, what they need, right? It's coming back to that point. The program connects artists with one another, fostering a network of mutual support while amplifying community voices. By centering equity and minimizing administrative burdens, the fund demonstrates how outreach can shift power dynamics to the community to the artists so they can create transformative outcomes. I never forget with one of our cohorts, we do have group coaching sessions, just one session a month for 4 months. And that's the only kind of obligation. There's no reports, there's no, but at the first session, people just started sharing what they were using the funds for. This was not asked, um, even in the proposal. It's more, how is this work? How would you use funds to impact your community? That's what we really wanted to know. And their ability to articulate that, so that application reviewers were really clear about what they wanted to do, was really what it was about. And so from there, we found people just sharing out of their own what the funds were used for. And it was just such a beautiful thing. That trust, right? When you sort of say, you have to tell me, doesn't that create some kind of tension and friction? But it just kind of organically happened, and it's created a program that's built on a lot of trust, right? So I'm giving you a spotlight of these. I'm giving you the resources for some of these documents, for some of these programs, so that you can learn more about them should you wish to. And then Tour West. So many will know about Tour West. It focuses on expanding access to high quality performing arts experiences, largely in rural and underserved communities across our region. And here's what makes Tour West impactful. The program enables organizations to bring performances that otherwise wouldn't be financially feasible. It enables them to increase cultural offerings in areas that often lack them. I love this quote from this whole section is from our in 2022, and some of you may have participated. Ashanti and I and a former colleague did an assessment of Tour West, really reaching out through focus groups and surveys to understand how this 20+ year program has evolved. What are some of the challenges? What are the strengths? And this was a quote from one of those sessions at the bottom of the screen. And there were others that were so impactful. To think that this program, which is not a hugely resourced program, but one grantee feels that it's the single most important factor in bringing quality live performance art to our rural community. It makes the difference, right? By funding regional touring, Tour West allows presenters to adapt performances to reflect their community's needs and interests. And those are the things that we ask them about in their application. So one of the challenges that certainly came from our study, from our assessment, we learned that the limited funding, along with a really complicated application, could make it really difficult for folks. They would let us know this Tour West application is harder than some of the other applications that are a lot more funds. And so we work to simplify that application. And so it's that responsiveness. When you learn something, what can you do to fix it? So we've thought, what are we doing that is a requirement by this National Endowment for the Arts funded program? And what are we doing just because we've always done it? We've always required all these things, but it's really not essential to the program. And we started to eliminate some of those things. And I think some of the grantees will bear out, some of the grantees who've had this funding year over year or multiple years will bear out that it has gotten easier to apply for the program. And so the reality is we never have enough funding for this program, but we're able to tell these stories like the quote at the bottom and other stories that we have about Tour West, share that with the NEA and say, hey, we need more. We need more for our expansive region. We need more funds. We want to help smaller organizations with these funds. So moving on is our newest program. It's a Wallace-funded program, Cultural Sustainability. It is a national program in each of the U.S. regional arts organizations, our counterparts across the country. We're all running this program similarly and uniquely based on our regions. But it is all around taking trust-based philanthropy to new heights by prioritizing equity and shifting power to communities. So some key features are around unrestricted multi-year funding. Oh, I think I have the wrong slide here. So you'll have to just bear with me. I'll get this corrected. But unrestricted multi-year funding, community-led decision-making, and capacity building. So organizations decide how to use the funds, which relieves the stress of traditional grants and allows for long-term planning. It's multi-year funding. It's 2-year funding. We'd love to be able to do more, but this is a huge step for us as an organization. And we held stakeholder roundtables to find out what is needed. That was what came up. We need multiple year funding. We need to know from one year to the next that we can count on funds. So we tried to respond to that. Community-led decision-making is around involving grantees and community leaders in shaping the funding criteria and application processes and ensuring that they aligned with the community's needs. So we listened through these stakeholder sessions that we held across our region, and then we implemented that directly into the grant program. There's capacity building, so there's peer-led learning communities. This program actually kicks off tomorrow with our peer-led community sessions. There's coaches that have been hired to work one-on-one and in small groups with folks. We aligned tiered funding. That was something else that came out of our stakeholder sessions. And so this model builds resilience across the region's arts ecosystem. So it shows how outreach rooted in trust, collaboration, and equity can empower organizations to strengthen cultural heritage and amplify marginalized voices. I don't want to paint this pretty picture as if we've always gotten it right. This is a road that we've traveled. And so we've learned along the way. And there are also many people who will tell us, and some of you may be in this space now, let us know when we're not doing the right thing. That's so valuable. Sometimes we get afraid or nervous if we get called out for doing something in a way that the community doesn't appreciate, but that strengthens us. If we decide, right, that it took trust even to send that email and say, hey, Anika, I don't like this, or this isn't responsive. And then respond to that. Respond to what was requested. So I will get this slide corrected and put the right notes for cultural sustainability. But ultimately, all these case studies reveal, right, that community outreach is most impactful when it is intentional, inclusive, and collaborative. When we center the voices of those most affected, right, these programs demonstrate the power of outreach to build trust, resilience, and equity. I feel like I'm saying trust over and over because ultimately that's what I want you to get from this session. As you think about your own outreach work, consider how these principles might guide your strategies for deeper community connection. Okay? So we're going to start to turn the table. I've been talking a lot, and here's a little bit more about the common themes from these programs. I've been talking a lot, and now we're going to start to turn the table to you to kind of get in some small groups and think about how these models, how these different examples, how this terminology that we're starting to dig into can inspire your outreach efforts. How can we leverage these principles, right, to foster equity and inclusion? People want to feel seen, valued, heard. That's what we want. That's what I want. That's what you want. And so that's what communities want. Everybody wants those same things, really. And so what are we going to be willing to do to make sure that that happens, right? So I see there's a lot, like 95 things in the chat. And so when you all get ready to go to your small groups, we'll make sure to read the chat and see if there's any questions that are bubbling up so that we can be responsive when you come back to the main session. So designing your outreach plan. And so now it's that time. And so what's going to happen in your breakout groups is you'll work together to create a basic outreach plan. Now, you're not going to be able to get it all done. One, you're going to be working with a couple of people that you've never potentially met before. Maybe you'll end up, these are going to be random groups, but you're going to end up potentially with people that you don't know, which is great. And you really, right, should kind of do this outreach plan with your team. And I know some of you are a team of one. And so when we go back, when we think about those word clouds, who is my community? Who could I build this with? What volunteers do I have? And so on. So I'm going to ask if we can drop this outreach plan template in the chat. And I can do it too. So everyone should have access to that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more, but I want you to be able to look at it at the same time. So this is a simple tool that breaks the process into clear steps in terms of creating an outreach plan. So this is what you're going to do for your session. So we're going to be thinking about target audience, key messages, engagement strategy, and sustainability plan. It's one thing to do like a big splash of a thing. Wow, we did that. Is it sustainable? Is it going to last? So sustainability always has to be a thought, right? So first, we're going to think about outreach. We're going to think about reach, target audience. Be specific as possible. Are you reaching out to young people in rural areas, maybe families in urban neighborhoods, or perhaps Indigenous elders or other underserved groups? Ask yourselves, what are their unique needs or challenges? Why is it important for you to connect to them? This step is about understanding who your community is and why they matter, right? Then you have your key message. Define what you want to say to them. And it doesn't need to be perfect, right? It needs to be authentic. What's the main purpose of your outreach? Be transparent. Are you trying to build awareness? Do you want them to come to shows? Like, be honest about that. Spark a conversation. Think about what message will truly resonate with this group. Make it meaningful and relevant to their needs and aspirations. Then it's your engagement strategy. How? How will you connect with your audience? What methods will you use? Will you host community events? Will you partner with local schools, libraries? Will you use social media? What is the role of social media for you? Consider accessibility. Will your outreach be easy for people to engage with? Are there barriers like language, location, or technology that you need to address? We, as the institutions, we need to address those barriers. This step is about finding the best way to reach your community and making it as easy as possible for them to connect with you. Then the sustainability plan, it's really about how you'll make your outreach last. Building relationships takes time. How are we going to maintain them? Will you create ongoing partnerships? Will you gather feedback from the community regularly? With the culture sustainability program that I just spoke about, our newest program, we're having an advisory council who we are accountable to, that we'll meet with periodically to update them, give them reports where they can ask us questions. We are accountable. And in that, we're having a regular, consistent connection to community through the program. Is there a mentorship component to your outreach? Also think about what resources you'll need, like money, like staff, like time. Ask yourself, how will I know my outreach is successful? How will I know? What will success look like for your group and your community? So this is where we need to like envision some things, right? So this is going to be a quick, because the main thing is you have this tool and I want you to just have some time to get sensitized to it. We don't have a ton of time, but I want to make sure, yeah, that you get about 15, 20 minutes in a group, that you get a note taker who's just going to take some notes of what you've said, the things that you touched on. You can take a number of approaches. You can decide as a group, we're going to focus on target audience. We're going to focus on key message, or we're going to just touch on a little bit from each one. There's no wrong answer here. It's more about sensitizing, listening to other people, strategies that they've employed, even share things that didn't work and what you learned from them. That's so valuable, right? And then when we come back, then I'll just voluntold a couple of people, unless there's actual volunteers, to just open mic and share in 1 to 2 minutes what you talked about. Just a quick, I'll just probably call on two groups or so to just give us a quick feedback, okay? So Ashanti is going to start to prepare the breakout rooms. You're just going to be about 4 people in a room, really small. I know there's a lot of us here, but really small so that everybody can interact. And we will, yeah, we'll come back. See how much left that I want to do. Yeah, let's give it 20 minutes. And then we'll come back and we'll wrap up quickly and hear a little bit from all of you. All right. Thanks so much, you all. And thank you for your patience. Hopefully you got a few minutes to just kind of get sensitized to the outreach plan and how you can use it. I hope that you use it. Please reach out to me and tell me that you used it. And even maybe you shared some other things with each other that you already use. But yeah, I'd love to. Is there someone who wants to use the raised hand function and just give us a little feedback? We will acknowledge you with the raised hand function, and then you can unmute and let us know just any takeaways from your short time together. Anyone quick? We're gonna close out very soon.
I don't know how to raise my hand.
Okay.
I
Well,
can't find
you know how to unmute, so go ahead. Go for it. Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we really focused a lot of our time on kind of targeting the audience and talking about the different things of how we can cater like a theater event specifically to a way that would be engaging for that community. So our audience was the Latino community, and we talked about having us it has to be able to be spontaneous, so you can't have some type of rigid seating structure where people have to know ahead of time exactly how many people and who's going to go. um Also constant engagement. There isn't like a central focus just on a stage with a dark audience. There has to be room for people to be able to interact constantly with one another. It's not as much of the importance as just on the stage. It's just as important, if not more important, that people can constantly talk to one another. And also the idea of food being very important, that if they need to have food and not just little charcuterie boards, but like foods that's sustaining, that's also very culturally important for that community.
Absolutely. And I can't see you, but I recognize your voice, Inez. Thank you for being here. Um, Thank you for sharing. And I see a few folks are putting things in the chat. So thank you, Cynthia, for your 2 great ideas from your group. Sending a flyer home on program day to make contact with the parents. Yes. Creating a classical music petting zoo. We love a petting zoo, instrument petting zoo. And thanks, Elena, for the approval. And food, thank you, Inez, for food is so important. Something that's going to warm the tummy, warm food is very important. Sometimes it's childcare, right? All of those things play an important role. All right. So just for the sake of time, I'm just going, oh, Lee, I did see your hand. Do you want to quickly share something?
Oh, I'll keep it very short. We were talking about the complexities of engaging with local tribes in the area, and coming from Los Angeles, I'm aware of, there's a lot of politics between tribes, and that there's a great importance to dedicate a lot of research to cultural competency to understand those histories and those generations, to see if there's a way to accommodate, and if possible, hiring the community as consultant.
Yes, hiring the community as consultant. Wonderful. Thanks for that. And if anybody else, while we have these last few minutes, while I'll be talking, if you want to share in the chat, that'd be great. Let us share from one another. We could go on for hours with this, right? And it's so important. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. A few reminders is just that, again, it's not a one size fits all. There are some themes, like we said, food makes a difference, things like childcare, things like transportation. But we could assume those things, but are those really the key needs are they a key barrier? Did we find that out, right? Let's talk, let's actively listen and hear what the community is saying. We want to collaborate, right, with local organizations, with leaders, with our own teams, and then being open to learning. Outreach is a dynamic process, so we're going to learn. We're going to make mistakes. It's okay. It's okay. We can fail forward. And so I want you to keep using this guide, using this template as a resource. I hope it's useful for you. Again, outreach is not just about connecting with communities. It's about building trust, fostering inclusion, and that sustainable, lasting impact. Thank you again, y'all, for taking those few moments with each other. I just want to give a nod to some realities of challenges that exist, some barriers, right? One major barrier can be geographic isolation. We in the Creative West region, we are expansive. We have rural communities, we have island communities, we have water and mountains that are landmarks and distance and so on. And so reaching these areas requires creativity, like leveraging digital tools, expanding access, or partnering again with local organizations that already have a presence. Lack of resources is a real thing, and that could be funding, that could be time, that could be staff. But what does it look like to build strategic partnerships, right? Collaborating with schools, libraries, organizations that can share that load with you, and that transparency to say, hey, we don't have this, but we have this, right? Coming back to those trust issues, it's that conversation. It's remembering, particularly we use Zoom, we have phone calls, we do all these things where we're not together in a room, we not always able to see body language. And so we need to kind of always be intentional, mirror, ask questions, be intentional, listen, be transparent, demonstrate cultural competency, right? And I have that word in our glossary of terms in our resources, but it's really about understanding and respecting the values and traditions of the communities you serve, making sure that you're establishing genuine connections, right? So as you think about your outreach efforts, think about leveraging those local partnerships to bridge gaps, things that you don't have. Adapting to each community's unique needs by prioritizing cultural competency. Be patient and persistent in building trust, right? It's the foundation for those lasting relationships, okay? So I don't know that if there's any questions, I want to be cognizant of time and happy to stay on for a couple more minutes. If there are questions, I'm going to look at the chat. But just to round up with some of our takeaways, it's trust, 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 right? That is it. It's understanding your community, knowing that outreach starts with knowing who you're serving. And if you don't know them, learn, reach out, have coffee, reach out, go to someone else's office, go to someone else's space. And being able to tailor your efforts to those unique needs, right? and building trust through collaboration, embracing being flexible. You may have had an idea when you approach the community, but remember that outreach is not one size fits all, and be prepared to put that idea aside or to refashion that idea based on what you learn through active listening. Okay. So this work takes time, but it's also incredibly rewarding. I think not only does it support the work, there's lasting friendships that come for years and years and years from it. When we do this right and build on trust, your efforts not only strengthen the communities you serve, but also enrich the broader cultural landscape. It's about the whole, the ecosystem. We're here to support you at Creative West. This workshop and that we have a series of workshops is all about responding to the needs that you all identified. And you showed up today, and so that means a lot to us. So I really want to thank you for taking your energy and your time today to engage with us. Your commitment is truly, truly inspiring. We look forward to seeing the incredible impact you'll continue to have. We want to hear from you. Please do not hesitate to reach out. In the resources, when you get the slide deck, you'll have the results from the Mentimeter. Remember, we did those word clouds, the outreach plan templates linked there, the BIPOC Artist Fund. We presented at Grantmakers in the Arts in Chicago last fall. And so that whole presentation is there for you to learn more about how we structured that program and worked with community. The Tour West assessment from a couple of years ago, that report is there. And then a case study about the beginnings of our cultural sustainability program, and then a glossary of some of the terms that I used today. So thank you so, so much. And I'm going to hand back over to Ashanti. I want to thank Bonnie and Tash so much for the interpretation today. Thank you so much for being with us. And over to you, Ashanti.
Thank you so much, Anika. Thank you, everyone. And I would also like to thank our incredible interpreters, Tosh Terry and Bonnie Chauncey Riggs, for interpreting our first webinar. To help us improve future webinars, I will be dropping a survey in the chat and it will also be sent out for the after this session as well. And please make sure to mark your calendars for the next webinar. The next one will focus on emergency preparedness with Jan Newcomb and Ruby Lopez Harper on January 29th. And the registration information will be shared with that for that one soon. And thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you in future webinars. So thank you.